My interpreter sucked. Now what? Hi, I'm Jim Hacking, immigration lawyer practicing law throughout the United States at our offices in St. Louis, San Diego, and Washington, D.C. One of our YouTube commenters was asking me recently about what happens if the interpreter screwed up at the interview. Now, usually you're not going to have an interpreter at most interviews. At a naturalization interview, it'd be very unusual for you to have an interpreter. You might, if it is an N-648 disability waiver naturalization case where someone has gotten some kind of a waiver to not take the test or do the interview in their native language. But generally, in most citizenship cases, you're not going to have an interpreter. This is also true in most marriage-based immigration cases, green card cases based on marriage. And the reason for that is you usually want to have somebody there you want the spouse and the foreign national to be able to demonstrate that they talk to each other in English, or that they can at least communicate well. And usually you're going to have the U.S. citizen or LPR sponsor serve as the translator if need be. Most immigration officers and consular officials can communicate with the beneficiary, and usually that's going to be done in English. It's, of course, not a rule that the beneficiary be able to speak English, but for the most part, in most instances, the beneficiary is capable of understanding English enough to go through certainly the I-130 portion of a green card interview. We have had interpreters help with the green card questions because some of those are pretty technical immigration terms and legal terms, and you want to make sure that the interpreter interprets things so that the foreign national understands the questions being asked and is able to give answers in their own language so that the communication lines are strong and solid and that there's not a lot of misinformation. The one place where you see the most use of interpreters is in asylum. And in asylum, it's very, very important that you get a good interpreter. I once had an interpreter who spoke the language but wasn't a native speaker. And that really caused problems for us in Kansas City when the asylum officer came down from Chicago. The officer was actually getting upset with the interpreter because he was not doing a good job of even keeping up with what was going on. It was really, really difficult. And this, of course, was an interpreter chosen by my client, not by me. And so since then, we've taken over control over who picks the interpreter, and we have certain questions that we ask for them. Now, in the asylum interviews, you're going to have a monitor, someone who works for the government, listening to the entire interview, making sure that the interpreter is interpreting things correctly, that they're not giving answers to the foreign national, or they're not changing the foreign national's answers. Now, this YouTube commenter said that in his asylum interview that the interpreter had said months versus days on an important, crucial fact. In other words, like how long the persecution took, or how long it lasted, or how long had this been going on. And the interpreter screwed up the timeline. And now that can be a real problem, especially in the asylum context, because asylum is all about your credibility. It's all about your ability to explain what happened to you, and they are just looking for inconsistencies. So if you have an interpreter who screws up the timeline, you're probably going to want to correct that very quickly. Now, I believe in this situation, the person leaving us the comment had an attorney there, and it seems as if the attorney spoke the same language, and the attorney was able to point out that the mistake had been made. But a lot of times you're not going to be that lucky. A lot of times your attorney might not speak the native language. Obviously, if everybody speaks Spanish, then that might help. But for some less popular languages at USCIS or at the asylum office, you might not have that luxury. You might not have the ability of the attorney to correct the translator. Now, my wife Amani, being a native Arabic speaker, has corrected translators in the past, and then the monitor has jumped in and said, yes, attorney Hacking is correct. So it's really, really important that you vet and test your interpreter. You want someone who has done it before. I think you want to have someone who's done it in the immigration context, and if you can find someone who's done it in your case type, that's really good, because a lot of the same questions come up, a lot of the same issues come up, and if they're experienced in handling immigration interviews or immigration court hearings, then I think that you're going to be much better off than, say, your buddy Ricardo, who's going to come and just sort of serve for free as an interpreter. As with so many things, you get what you pay for. So the problem for our YouTube commenter is I think that you're sometimes bound by the mistakes of your interpreter. That's certainly true if they've poked a big hole in your case, and that's going to come back and bite you. Obviously, the interpreter is not going to get in any real legal trouble. That's all going to come back on you. So as always, with all things, it's your case. It's your responsibility. Even if you have an attorney, even if you have an interpreter, you need to be on top of everything, and you need to be damn sure that you have vetted your interpreter and make sure that they don't make dumb mistakes. Hope this all makes sense. Hope that my English language has gone well and that you didn't need an interpreter for me. But if you do, or if you have questions, you want to give us a call, 314-961-8200. You should really think about joining our Immigrant Home Facebook group. We have literally thousands of members in there talking about immigration every single day. We have our YouTube channel where we have thousands of YouTube videos where we have tons of great content. You should be able to find lots of answers to any of your immigration law related questions in our YouTube channel. You should think about subscribing so that you get updates whenever we make videos like this one. And then of course, you also want to join us. Most Tuesdays and Thursdays, you'll find us in our Immigration Answer Show, where Daniel and I try to answer as many of your immigration law related questions as possible, usually from noon to 1 Central on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.